Alrighty, I don't know what this is, but I felt inspired after the Xbox showcase earlier today, when I wrote this, on June 9th. I wanted to type up something about Gears of War, so I just kind of started, and it turned into something I could probably read, so you guys get to deal with that now. I am, surprising absolutely fucking nobody who's ever perceived my existence in any capacity, a gamer. And I have been for the majority of my sentient life. Yes, I know. No need to thank me for my service. I grew up playing games like Madagascar, Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3, Ratchet and Clank, Up Your Arsenal, all on the PS2. My mom really didn't like violence in media. She didn't want me watching Pokemon for some fucking reason. Yeah, it made no sense, I agree. But it meant that I was a Sony kid who didn't own an Xbox 360. My mom played her horror games The Family Friend, shout out the closest person I've ever had to a father, and I played my lighthearted platformers and adventure titles. But because I'm a shit, whenever I spent the night at a friend's house on the weekend, I would be exposed to the popular shooters of the time. Halo, Dead Space, Fear, Left 4 Dead, Call of Duty, and of course, Gears. Now, I've established my love for Dead Space, and I will never do that franchise justice, but that's not the game I wanted to talk about today. Gears of War was a game that I had seen my buddies play a little bit. I knew a guy, Zach, who wanted to freak his girlfriend at the time out by showing her Kim's death in Gears of War 1. I don't know how to explain who this person was to me, so I'm just gonna leave it at that, but I remember being fascinated by, like, wretches on the ceiling and reavers flying in, cedars krilling the space, how unbelievably gray everything was. It was really cool. But I wasn't allowed to experience violent video games, so I didn't ask questions, afraid that Zach would remember what my mom had said and shut it off. But I had heard homies of the channel, Pallidi and Brian, discussing Gears at school from time to time, saying things like Cantus and Nasher and calling Mira a bitch. Casual misogyny aside, I was always curious. This is before I had a smartphone, so I couldn't just pull up Pocket Google and learn. I had to wait till I could experience the game myself. One Friday after school, the three of us were at Pallidi's. His older brother got out before we did, so he got first dibs on the Xbox in the basement. I'm walking down the steps being a dingus when I hear something. I look to my right and I see the iconic Crimson Omen for the first time, a backdrop to a destroyed cityscape. For the next several hours, I annoyed Brian, Pallidi, and his brother with constant questions. I was hooked. Who is that guy yelling? Why is that normal lady surrounded by those monsters? Wait a second, that's a chainsaw? Who the fuck is Cole? I eventually pissed off Pallidi's brother so much that he let me play a game of Guardian, which I had no fucking clue how to play or what the objective was, but I remember hiding in a destroyed building as Mira while everybody kept dying. It was great. I had a blast. It was awesome. But that was it. For then. I was in 6th grade. I had other distractions going on at the time. About 2 years later, summer of 2012, I'm hanging out with both of them again. And Brian had brought his 360 with him for a long weekend of video games, swimming, snacks, and pissing off Pallidi's dad by being up at 2 a.m. We got a gray tube TV in the back of the room and a bigger, more modern TV on an entertainment center near the front. Somebody hands me a controller and begins setting up a LAN horde game in Gears of War 3. I hadn't played or seen anything for 2 years, but I instantly recognized the Lancer, the most iconic piece of equipment in the franchise. I was more familiar with shooter controls by this point, so all I asked was, how do you turn on the chainsaw? We're playing on the map with the periodic fog sandstorm effect, I think it's called Trenches, so it was a little spooky at times, and a Cantus managed to get the drop on us. It screamed, stunning Brian and Pallidi, they go down to grinder fire, and it's just me alive. I'm behind the Cantus, just out of range of the scream. It's the perfect opportunity. I rev my chainsaw bayonet, and I cut the Cantus in fucking half. That moment, right there, when this Grub's meat chunks are falling to the floor, while my buddies were dumbfounded that you could even chainsaw one of them, and thanking me for saving them, when I saw the plus 420 points fading on my screen. That moment was magic. I have never felt pure elation to that degree since. It completely changed me. I started looking for more information. I went home on Sunday night and watched all the trailers for all 3 games, including the iconic Mad World one. The next weekend I kept asking to play more. I started learning different weapons and enemies, reading lore, figuring out certain characters were. We eventually started playing the campaign in arcade mode. I learned who Jack was, why Prescott's a bitch, what the Krill and Cedars were, what the Hammer of Dawn was, Corpsers, Tickers, Brumok, Savage Locust versus regular Locust, Emulsion, Lambency, Maria, Marcus's fucking dad. So much information all at once, and I couldn't get enough. It was disgusting, bloody, violent, and extremely depressing, but I was having a blast. A few years later, I would get into the universe even more, since I actually had disposable income at that point. I started learning about the Pendulum Wars, the world of Sarah. I play the older games, the newer games. I actually love Gears 5. Holy shit, it's gorgeous and so much fun. I bought comics, I read books. Brian and I even played through the Gears 3 campaign on Insane One in one day, one sitting, like 2 years ago, on the old shitty 360 servers. I actually spent money on Xbox Live Gold for that shit, and it's one of the best decisions I ever made. Gears is a franchise that I discovered right at the perfect time to completely shape my opinion on video games. I kept chasing that feeling of cutting a Cantus in half, and I will keep chasing it because it's impossible to recreate those specific conditions again. All this is to say, I'm looking forward to E-Day. I have fallen for the marketing from Microsoft, and I don't need no stinking life alert. Leave me on the floor. That was horrible. You can't use that shit. What the fuck? I'm a little disappointed that we're getting blueballed on the sequel trilogy, but I get it. People weren't vibing as much with them, and making a choice at the end about a major death kind of puts your narrative team into a corner. Not to mention nostalgia sells. Younger Marcus fighting for his fucking life and almost losing against a single Locust drone is such an amazing tone shift when we know that he ends up being a force of nature to the Locust Horde. As a wise nihilist with a gaming news show once said, "No game, no hype, those is the rules, let's fucking do this." But I am hype. And there's no game. Because the Gears core loop is so solid that I know it will be a good game. Even Judgment, the neglected redheaded stepchild, played good. It had poor pacing and a weird Futurama gimmick, and an odd decision to have Onslaught exist at all. Sure, but it was still a Gears game. It still had a Lancer, it was still violent, bloody, and depressing, and it still felt amazing to play. I love Gears of War. I love Gears of War. I don't... There's something amazing about how a cover shooter in concept sounds so unbelievably slow, yet Gears of War, especially the new ones, are super, super fast, very high mobility. Like, the way that I watch some people play sometimes, and the way that they snap to cover and bounce around the map, it's so fluid and it's so fast. It's so cool. I'm fanboying over a franchise that hasn't had a good game in, I think, 3 or 4 years. Gears Tactics was actually really good, but it's not a core game to me, it's not a good shooter. For the longest time, Microsoft just seemed to not care about one of its flagship franchises, so I'm glad that we're finally getting some news. I don't think we have a release date, I don't think we have any information other than that trailer and the name, but I am so on board. I'm so on board. I know this isn't a Destiny video, and I know that I said that I was going to be putting out a bunch of Destiny content across the next couple of weeks because of final shape, but content's not ready. I wanted to sit on my opinions for a little bit longer, and I'm not working on any PvP stuff until I get everything unlocked so I can go into the Crucible with the full toolkit. So I'm working on doing all the PvE stuff. So the Destiny content isn't really ready yet, so this is just some short term, like, okay, well, let's work on something in the meantime, get this out. And I also felt really inspired, I felt passionate, and I wanted to just ramble about Gears, so... Are you excited for E-Day? I'm fucking excited for E-Day. God, oh man. I'm gonna be so annoying to all of my buddies. Sorry, but it's not like I haven't done it before, and, you know, I'm gonna keep doing it, so... Anyway, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Have a wonderful day.